Hello interwebs, I hope you are all doing well, and today I have something a little bit special for all of you. Normally on Mondays, I've been doing my list of favorite Star Trek episodes, and I still have my list of the top 20 best Star Trek episodes to get out. But that list is going to take a little bit of time because it's agonizingly difficult, and also this week I am traveling for a friend's wedding. So instead, I am actually going to be reviewing a little novella that came out from the Orville. If you have not heard of this novella, the Orville Sympathy for the Devil is actually a kind of a unique little thing in sort of Orville canon, I guess, because it was actually originally supposed to be an actual episode of the show. Unfortunately though, while they were filming season 3 of the Orville, COVID-19 happened, so they had to shut down production. And that, mixed with the pregnancy of 3 of the actors on the show, meant that this episode kind of had to be shelved and they weren't able to film it. Which is honestly a deep tragedy because this story is excellent. But at the very least, Seth MacFarlane decided that he was going to release it as this novella, so we can at least find out what that story was going to be. And being honest with all of you, I am actually kind of upset that they weren't able to film this episode because, like the entirety of the Orville season 3 so far, I was deeply impressed with some of the moral complexity and honestly just dark places that this story was able to go. Like, the Orville overall this year with season 3 has been fantastic, and this novella is no different. Like, if you thought that this was the novella that they didn't make because the episode was the least of all of them, I would highly disagree. Like, honestly, if they had made this one, arguably, it could have been one of the best episodes that they did. Because I jumped into it expecting, like, oh, I'm gonna have a fun little Orville adventure, and quite frankly, the first half of this novella is a Nazi storyline. Like, quite literally, it is a storyline about a young boy growing up to be a Nazi. Like, head of a concentration camp Nazi. And it doesn't hold back in any of it. Certainly, it's not the darkest I've ever seen. It's not like Schindler's List up in here, but It is definitely a very dark depiction of the falling into that mindset that you would see a young boy growing up in Nazi Germany fall into. Quite frankly, I was reading this book and I'm like, this is really good, but when does the Orville start? And I'll get into spoilers in just a second if you read the book or don't care about spoilers, but I'll just sort of leave this spoiler free for right now. But the way that this storyline connects with the Orville and how it brings in our Orville characters is deeply fascinating. While it is not necessarily one of the most unique types of storylines that I've ever seen in a science fiction or even a Star Trek show, like I've seen very similar storylines to this in episodes of The Next Generation or Voyager, or even Deep Space Nine for that matter, but it manages to mix that type of storyline in with an interesting ethical question around reality and whether or not someone should be morally culpable for actions that they take with the intent to take them, whether or not someone was harmed or not in the process of them having taken that action. Again, I have to be very, very vague here, but just the way that they chose to do this storyline just asks so many interesting moral questions that ultimately kind of resonate with a lot of stuff going on in modern society today, especially in the United States, that I was quite frankly like in awe of. And while at the end of the day, the storyline doesn't necessarily break new bounds in terms of what it does in terms of just like the A to B to C plotting. Like, the end of this storyline is nothing that I haven't seen in other Star Trek episodes. Just the questions along the way and the elements of this story that they bring into it, I think, are some of the most unique that I've seen in the Orville, most certainly, and in all of Star Trek in these types of tales. So, that being said, I will warn you, this is a rougher book to read, but if you are looking for a great Orville story or just a great science fiction tale, I cannot recommend this book enough. But that being said, I'm going to get into spoilers for just a minute because I want to talk a little bit about those things before I wrap out this review. So, to get into spoilers, the main crux of this plot revolves around the fact that this Nazi boy that we see grow up actually grew up within a holodeck. So all the people that he killed as a Nazi ultimately were just holodeck creations. And we find out that he was left in this holodeck simulation by his parents because they were captured by the Krill, and so they left him here not knowing that he ultimately would get swept up in this holodeck program that would honestly radicalize him to Nazism. So finally, having been rescued and brought back to the reality of the Orville crew is left to this question of, well, number one, we have a guy who, for all intents and purposes, is a Nazi. Like, he was a literal Nazi running a concentration camp. But also, he didn't actually kill anybody. They were all holograms. But also, he had every intent to do a mass murdering of Jewish people. He was complicit in a genocide. How do you reconcile this back into society today? Is that even possible? Should he also be held accountable for war crimes, for very literal things that he intended to do, but necessarily didn't actually commit against actual people, but thought he was? Very interesting ethical questions that this novella wrestles with, and it gives you a stark picture of what that means to do so. Honestly, quite frankly, as I said before, this isn't a new storyline that I've seen before. I mean, like 7 of 9, for example, kind of even fits this, where she was like complicit in atrocities with the Borg and people having a big grudge against her because of that, as we saw played out through numerous storylines in Star Trek Voyager, while herself also trying to integrate herself into the Voyager crew. Like, 7 of 9 fits a very similar mold to what this storyline is. But just the fact that they tell that story while mixing in like these ideas of Nazism and ethics, I think is just super fascinating. And the novella also draws parallels to things going on today, saying like, yeah, this capacity to fall into this radicalization is within all of us. We sometimes all fall in line with authority, and some of us will stand up to it, but we don't really know until we're in that situation. And it makes clear that this was applying to today. This is not something that was just like abstract, oh look, it's the Nazis. Like, there's a rising tide of fascism around the world today, and this episode makes that clear. So I really, really loved this novella. Again, not radically different or new, but explores that storyline and uses that storyline to explore really interesting ethical conundrums that it doesn't give easy answers to. So for that, I highly recommend this novella. Go check it out. Go pick it up. It is excellent. And if you're a big fan of the Orville, this is a must read. That all being said, that is my review for the Orville Sympathy for the Devil. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments below. Are you going to pick it up? Did you read it? What did you think about it? Hopefully next week I'll be doing my top 20 episodes of Star Trek, so be on the lookout for that. Hopefully it'll be next week. Again, I'm traveling, and this is also a hard list, so we'll see if that actually gets done. But be on the lookout for that very soon. If you're curious about why my face looks new and different, go check out my main channel because I have a video about my recent surgery on my face, so you can find out more information there. But beyond all of that, I just say thank you to all of you for being here, and I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper.